There was a time when the prevailing view of librarians was that of a gentle scold, smart, helpful, prone to shushing. But in the past few years, they've increasingly found themselves painted as the enemy as schools have become political battlegrounds. Here to discuss it, we're joined by two local residents featured in the PBS documentary, The Librarians. The Reverend Jeffrey Dove is a freedom to read advocate and a pastor of St. James AME Church in Orange Park. Reverend Dove, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Julie Miller, a Jacksonville librarian and also a Freedom to Read advocate. Julie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Julie, I wonder if you could just start by telling us why you became a librarian in the first place.
Well, I think that I've always been an avid reader. When I was a child, my parents would ban me from reading Babysitter Club books if I would, like, that would be how they would ground me. Not ban, but ground me. So they knew that that was what really got to me. Um, I started out in education actually after college, teaching English in Suwannee County and Duval County. And then I ended up becoming a librarian because I saw the impact that media specialists could have in the schools on the students, and I really loved the idea of just being that safe place for students. I had taught primarily middle school, but high school was where I landed as a librarian, and it was it was just the right fit for me. I felt very much like I was living my purpose.
Tell us about that. I mean, what sort of impact did you feel you were having on students? What place in the world of a young student does the library serve?
Well, I think that when you think about the stereotypes of high schoolers, you kind of think that Breakfast Club vibe where you've got the jocks and the popular kids and the nerds and, the theater kids or whatever. And we saw all of those kids in the library, but beyond that, we saw the kids that didn't have that identity necessarily. They didn't have that group that they fit in with. But the library is just an open place for anyone. And so students were able to come in. There were I had no agenda for them. I didn't have assignments to give them like their teachers. Um, I was just there to provide a place, to provide information, to provide access to stories, and just give them a place where they could be themselves.
And it's interesting. I know there's been some research done about how children feel that the library is a safe place for them to be, whether it's a refuge from trouble that they're having in their personal lives or even from bullies. It is regarded as a safe space. It's sort of, a terrible irony that it became really a not safe space for librarians because of the work that you were doing. So tell us when you first ran into issues in terms of books being challenged in your own school library.
So I was in Clay County. I had been a media specialist there for 7 years when we got the first wind of any sort of book challenge. And a book challenge is when a person, it can be anyone in the community, but usually a parent, expresses a concern about some material that is in the library or in the curriculum. And in this case, a a mom of a local school actually just um, put a video up on Facebook where she read a very select passage from a book from the high school libraries that she found to be inappropriate, and she tagged all of the high school's Facebooks, all their Facebook pages, and um, and then of course the district freaked out, and this was over the summer, and the district administration actually just went in and pulled the books off the shelves without notifying anyone and deleted them from the catalog. Um, and I just happened to be up there during the summer doing a little work, and I noticed 3 days after it had happened that this had occurred. And so then I reached out to my administration and the district media specialist about this. And that's when, I had a conversation with the higher ups about, hey, this is not how it's supposed to go. We have a policy in place when there are book
And
challenges.
what is the policy that was in place at the time?
So at the time, the policy was the book should remain on the shelf. The person who has an issue with it, not just a complaint, but a challenge, has to fill out a specific form that we already had in our manual. Um, Fill out the form explaining what their issue was, where it was found, and certifying that they had read the book in full.
Why is that important?
Because context matters. Um, when it comes to reading a book, for example, if you read some of the classics like Beloved by Toni Morrison or The Color Purple, you're going to find scenes in them that are very difficult to read, that are very trying, whether it's because of sexual assault or because of, just terrible violence, but it is in there for a purpose, and it is in there for teens. We don't, that's one of the things that's important to acknowledge, is that most of the books that they are being challenged are young adult books that are found in high school libraries, not this is in a kindergarten classroom, the way that the misinformation online has been portraying it. Um, and so that when it comes to context, it is extremely important. I mean, if you look at the statue of David by Michelangelo, if you just zoom in on that one particular part, well, that could be considered pornographic. But when you zoom out, it's a piece of art.
Reverend Jeffrey Dove, I want to ask you about how you got involved. You're not a librarian. You weren't working in a school at the time that this all started to percolate up. How did you first learn about what was happening, and why did you personally decide that you wanted to take a stand on it?
Well, yeah, I wasn't looking to be in this fight. I was approached by some union members um, that had concern about books being removed, especially African American books um, with African American authors, and that kind of struck my interest. And so I kind of got into it. I went to the first school board meeting. I learned a lot about Moms for Liberty in their movement. And while at the meeting, um, the ladies from Moms for Liberty was asking that the fire of God fall on the school system. Uh, and as the man of God, I thought that was horrible. Uh, and a lot of this ideology, um, they try to support it with scripture and try to support it with God. And so, me being the preacher, the prophet, the man of God, I think I have a responsibility to defend God on what's right. And so I just wanted to be on the right side of it when I spoke truth. And my main concern really was Julie. I knew how hard she fought about the book, man, but I had a sneaky suspicion that they were going to do something to her,
Mm.
and they did. And that hurt me. I just don't feel like you should do people like that. And so that's how I kind of got into it.
The film shows that in addition to your advocacy for Julie at school board meetings and your speaking at school board meetings, which are some of the more powerful moments in the film, certainly, you also did community outreach where you were gathering young people, talking to them about some of the books that were on this review list or ban list or however you want to reference it. But it was, many hundreds of books, certainly in Clay County, that were being targeted, complained about, and in many cases pulled from the availability for students. And so you were concerned, as you said, many of these titles were about African American history by African American authors with a focus on issues of racism or, troubling histories that were being flagged and removed from shelves. What books were you initially kind of paying attention to that were being flagged in this way, and that you were showing to some of the people that you were gathering, these young people, to get their perspectives?
I think one of the books, because we had just as a church family read the 1619 Project together.
And
This is
remind us, for people who aren't familiar with the 1619 Project, it's
yeah,
a compilation that looks at slavery and its impacts continuing through the United
correct.
States history.
Right, right. So it's just a collection of different stories about slavery. Very powerful. Oh my God, it's powerful. And we had a conversation with the church. We had a conversation with our youth uh, about the book, the context, the things that were in the book, and some were graphic. Some was, slavery wasn't pretty, right? And so we really took a serious stance on trying to educate our kids about slavery, the 1619 Project. There was another book. There was a young lady working for me from the University of Central Florida who didn't know that the book Hair Love, uh, that depicts African Americans in their hair. And she felt as though if she had read that book, she would have had better self esteem coming up in school.
Hair Love is a children's book,
Yeah,
and it is a celebration of African American hair styles, hair in history and culture, and its appreciation.
yeah,
But that was one of the books that was flagged. Was that surprising to you?
very. And so I had a lot of conversation. Well, not a lot of conversation, but conversation with Moms for Liberty, because I'm always trying to find. I try to listen and see where people are coming from. And their biggest thing is you can't have pornographic material in the books for kids. That's not right. But that's not all the books that they were trying to. That was just the I guess the scapegoat, or that was just kind of the way to open the door. And I brought that to their attention. I said, listen, no, okay, let's get off the pornographic material for a moment, and the list of the other, but they couldn't explain it.
Some of these books, Julie, included, for instance, a history of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah,
A lot of this reflected a list that was created by a lawmaker in Texas. It's called the Krause list. It was 850 some books that he compiled initially and flagged as problematic. And a lot of them were about the LGBTQ plus experience by authors from that community. But as we said, many of them also were just straight up histories or books about the Black experience.
Mhm.
And so, how many of those books were you starting to see highlighted when you first began dealing with this? You talked about sort of that one book that was pulled from the shelves. What
Mhm.
happened thereafter?
Um, After that point, I actually went to the next school board meeting, and just kind of tried to provide some context for why books like this might be on the shelves, and my my personal and opinion, and that's based on community standards, which is an important thing when it comes to what books we're going to be placing on shelves. I might not be placing the uh, same books in a school library in Miami as I would in Clay County, um, due to community standards. And so basically, the series of books was A Court of Thorns and Roses, which has become very popular, like on Book Talk. Um, and much like the Harry Potter series that started when Harry Potter was 11 and went to the time when he was 17, and they grow in maturity, this series of books did the same, but they started with a protagonist at the age of 18 or 19 and progressed further in. And at that point, it became um, a bit more detailed when it came to the sex scenes. Um, and I explained we're not we're not given all of that information, especially when it comes to sequels, about what is actually age relevant. Um, and that's how that happens sometimes. And that while I'm not. I don't think any librarian is going to say we think every book belongs in every library. We have to follow our own collection development policies. Um, but from there, we saw. I went to that meeting, and like Reverend Dove, I tried to listen and have a conversation too, because that was the first meeting where our local book banner first came on the scene.
And this is a gentleman who has challenged hundreds of books and is the reason that Clay County leads the state and
Mhm.
really Florida leads the nation in terms of book ban challenges.
Yes, I don't know the exact percentage, but he is responsible for over 90% of the book challenges in Clay County. Um, and at one point, I think there were 11 people across the state who were responsible for 97% of the book challenges across the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing a very loud minority here.
And you spoke to him.
I did. After the meeting, I spent about 45 minutes speaking with him outside. I found out that that a young man in his life was going to be attending my school because they had just moved to the area from New York. And I gave him my school email address. I said, you don't have to go to the school board about this sort of thing. You can reach out directly to your media specialist if you have a concern about a specific title, because that's the way it's always been. Parental rights has been a big rallying cry over the past few years when it comes to all of this. But the thing is, we've never not had parental rights. Librarians will tell you we've always had that open door. If you've got an issue with a book that your child has read or is being asked to read in the curriculum, please reach out and let us know, and let's have that conversation. But conversations were not on the agenda for him. And in fact, he did an interview shortly after that, which he emailed to me, where he talked specifically about me and what I had said in the school board meeting, and said he wasn't ready to get the gallows out yet to see me swing. He just didn't want me to put books in the library without having read them first anymore.
We are getting a couple of calls, and I want to get to them. But if you're just joining us, we are talking to librarian Julie Miller and the Reverend Jeffrey Dove. They're both featured in the new film, The Librarians, which screens here at WJCT Studios on Thursday night. You can join our conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways that you can connect with us, including on social. We have a call from William in Arlington. Good morning, William. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I already raised my children there in Clay County. I was fortunate enough, or misfortunate enough, or depending on how you look at it, that I put them through private Catholic school. But I guess my comment is that I don't understand if there is an opt-out law here in Florida where you can opt your kids out from having to read any material. I don't understand what is the whole issue about banning books. Anybody that listens or reads or understands history or human nature understands that the more you ban something, the more it's going to get read. My kids, when they were in school, the Golden Compass was a book that was tried to be banned in the school that we were in. And the first thing I did was went and bought the book and gave it to my kids and gave it as an assignment. So I don't understand, if I'm not tying your kid to a chair and making him read anything, I don't understand what gives a right of those that don't want to read the book to make it so that other people can't read the book. We live in a free country, and I think that we should keep it that way. And that was my comment. Thank you for listening.
William, thanks so much. Julie, I mean, can you explain the opt-out option? That is certainly something that is available, but it now has sort of flipped, right? It's become an opt-in in many cases.
Yes, certainly we've always had it where if a parent did not want their student to, let's say in 11th grade, the Crucible is part of the curriculum, and I would say that junior teachers will tell you that, English teachers will tell you that there's always a few students, maybe one a year, who says, my parents don't want me to read this.
Is there a reason on that one?
Witchcraft usually.
Okay, gotcha.
Um, and so that's fine. And teachers are used to being able to provide an alternative assignment. Now, that's when we're talking about curriculum, where it's a captive audience. But we've got people reaching beyond that and saying, I don't want this available to anyone. Which is, in my opinion, that's just like if I were to say, well, I don't like SpongeBob, and I don't think that my kids should be able to watch SpongeBob. So I'm going to contact Nickelodeon and YouTube and tell them to take all the SpongeBob off the air. Well, that sounds ridiculous, right? You monitor your own child's media input. And that's really what this is about, and what William had to say about it being a free country. Absolutely, I agree. We're No one is bringing students into libraries and telling them you must check out and read this book. Libraries are open, free to choose what you would like. If this book isn't for you, I've got 20,000 other. And so choice has been a really important thing that's been missed in the conversation.
One of the things that this film, The Librarians, captures is just how heated and difficult some of this became, particularly at school board meetings. And I think we've all seen some of that happening, how contentious these meetings became. I want to play just a little bit from the film. It puts together some sound bites, both from the librarians and the people that are interviewed in this story, as well as some of the meetings that they were attending at the time. Let's take a listen and a look.
We were afraid. We were told not to tweet. We were told not to put things on Facebook.
They came after me, and they came after our library. They came after our library board.
We were called evil specialist instead of media specialist.
I know they're going to fire me. I know they're making a case to fire me. I know it's coming, but I'm not going to shut up. I'm just not going to do it.
You continue to speak out, you will be on the chopping block. You will lose your job. We have guns. When can we start killing liberals? When could they start hunting us?
Hold the line against the LGBT mafia and their dang pedo fans.
We had to bring in law enforcement to meetings.
This white truck pulled up behind us, and the guy rolled down his window, and he yelled at me. He said, "We're coming after you next."
We're gonna keep coming so hard. The only thing these woketards got to figure out is whether it's on their face, backbone, or thighs. Woo!
So, Julie, this became a safety issue for a lot of people involved in this. School board members were asking for security escorts to and from their cars. People were being ejected from meetings for making threats. Some people were coming with weapons to these meetings and also making threats. Did you ever feel that your personal safety was at risk?
I did. At some points, when the article that the gentleman sent to me came out, it was very shocking. I remember sitting on my couch and just in shock, starting to cry, and my husband saying, "What is wrong?" And I just held up my phone to him and gave it to him to read. And
Remind us what it said.
The gallows remark about, not ready to see her swing just yet.
Didn't he also say something about running?
He did later in another article, yes. About 6 months after that, in another article, he spoke to the reporter saying that he was going to clean out the Clay County school libraries, and anyone who got in his way, he would run over them like a dead body. Which, like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm not sure who's running over dead bodies, but just very triggering language. I do believe that he was very careful in his harassment to make sure that it could not be seen as a direct threat. I was actually speaking in Tallahassee later that year with another group of school librarians, talking to legislators about some of the laws that were on the books, the different bills that were being passed at the time. um, and urging them not to go with the language that currently was there because of how restrictive it was going to be and how devastating to school libraries that these bills would be. And I told them about what was happening in Clay County, and it was actually Representative Sam Garrison who said, "You need to talk to the sheriff." And it turned out Sheriff Michelle Cook was there that day too. And so I told her about what was going on, and she gave me her card and sent sergeants out to my house. And they sat with me and my husband, and we explained everything that was going on. And I showed them the emails and the challenge forms where he's writing my name on them. And they said, "Well, nothing here is a direct threat. There's nothing here that we can really do about it. So if he starts showing up around your house, then give us a call." And that was it. And I have 2 young children at home too. So some of the other librarians in the film faced much, much worse harassment and threats than I did. Like just horrific, and are still being doxxed and still being harassed to this day. But thankfully, they didn't have young children at home, and so I think I had to do a lot more to kind of be protective of my family, and wasn't able to be as outspoken as some of the others were. Um, but yeah, it has not been fun, certainly, and it definitely had a detrimental effect on my health and my mental health.
Reverend Dove, when did you learn that Julie's job was in jeopardy, or did you learn that after the fact?
Yeah, I learned it after the fact. I'm getting kind of emotional. Yeah, I learned it after the fact. I asked someone about Julie, and they had said that she had been terminated, and so I went to a workshop, um, and I was sat there for about 3 hours. I sat there all morning.
A school board workshop.
Yeah, because I wanted them to hear from me about that. I could see it coming, but I think it was important for me um, to support her because I knew that this book banning can get out of control. And so I just wanted to be there to support her and let the powers to be know that she is being supported. Um, I've had some comments said to me about my stance in the book, and actually we're doing a viewing on Sunday, and I requested that security be there. I'm gonna just tell you, man, Clay County is one of the racist counties I've ever been in my life. And not fearful, but I'm very conscious uh, of 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 violence or trying to do something to myself or to Judah or anybody connected with the book man.
You've also felt unsafe in your community because of this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's part. I mean, it's part of being the man of God. I don't fear anybody. I'm not afraid of the good old boys. I'm not. But and so that's why it was important for me to look them in their face and let them know that I'm supporting her. That was important to me. And so all of the librarians in the film, man, those are some courageous women. Good Google and move. I mean, they are really just. I mean, I think somebody said they were superheroes in a different kind of way. And I think that we have to support the superheroes in the capacity that we operate in. So
Certainly, this film, Julie, does celebrate the extraordinary courage, and these are people who were having threats openly made to them, people who were being doxxed, people were having people, show up and intimidate them physically and in person. And there are librarians in this story that say that their lives have been destroyed. One woman who comes from a very conservative background, as do you, a very religious background, as do you, saying that she can no longer go out in her own community because she has been labeled a pedophile and a groomer, and she has been threatened and followed, and she now arms herself driving around her own hometown that she grew up in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Amanda Jones in Louisiana, and she's one of my heroes. I'm grateful to also call her a friend. She's actually the person who put me in touch with the documentary makers. So she's the reason that I was asked to be in the film, was because she knew me and knew of what was going on with me. And she's just a legend. She's fearless. And but I will tell you, like, behind the scenes, she has a lot of struggles with it. I mean, it doesn't stop. They continue. She's in legal battles now about this kind of thing, and it's heartbreaking to see what someone could do to such an honestly wonderful person. She was raised in the church. She still goes to church. She loves God. She doesn't make that hidden in any way. And she cares about the kids in her community. And I think that's the story that you'll see with any of us in this film. And there were so many more not featured in the film who have similar stories. Reverend Dove said, when I was terminated, I wasn't technically terminated, I was reclassified, basically taken out of my library job after 9 years of highly effective evaluations, and told, you're going to teach this class in a course you've never taught before and have no experience. So it was a quiet firing, essentially. Thankfully, I have landed in another library job where I do feel supported, but I every day miss my high schoolers. It certainly derailed my career because I was, like I said, I was living my purpose. I was just there's a statistic that says that for students, especially students who are LGBTQ+, if they have one safe adult in their life, it greatly reduces their chance of taking their own life. And I feel like I was that safe adult for a lot of students. And I don't know who they have now.
The film is called The Librarians. It screens Thursday here at WJCT Studios. There will be a panel discussion featuring my two guests. I'll be moderating that discussion. It will include an audience Q&A. Tickets are free, but you do need to register. You can go to wjct.org/events. There'll be a lot more to talk about after we viewed the film collectively. But thank you so much for being here, Julie Miller, the Reverend Jeffrey Dove. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.